It's a super exciting week here in North Carolina. If you don't know, the Canes won the Stanley Cup. We've got local coffee shops giving out free coffee, filling up everyone's literal Stanley Cup. I got this whole thing filled with nitro cold brew for free because we're just so excited here in Raleigh about the Canes winning. And we even have a parade this weekend. But of course, I don't have anything to wear yet. I don't wear a lot of red, but I did thrift the skirt a few weeks ago. It's really long and it does have pockets. And I was going to turn it into an off the shoulder top, but since it has the pockets, I'm kind of thinking about just turning it into a ruffle tiered mini skirt. If you've been watching my videos lately, you can kind of tell that I'm really into the tiered, ruffly fabric. I'm gonna keep it going. I really like the way that it looks on me, especially since I'm so short. I just feel like that vibe kind of adds a little bit more action to my hips, which gives me the illusion of having a little bit more of an hourglass shape. So I think what I'm gonna do is, I can't really hold this at the same time that I'm holding the mic, but it's a really long skirt and it is kind of like an A-line, like it goes out. And I think what I'm gonna do is crop the skirt where I want it to be. Probably gonna have to take it in a little bit and then cut out strips to make the ruffle tiers. And then hopefully, what would be really cool is if I had enough fabric left to make a tube top at the end of this. If not, then I'm just gonna have to be basic and wear a black top like everyone else probably, which is okay. But I would like to have a fully handmade outfit for this little event. So anyway, with that being said, let's get to work, I guess. Now that I kind of have a general game plan, I think we can go ahead and get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is try on the skirt and see what needs to happen from there. Okay, so we've got this really sort of awkward length skirt going on, and there are pockets, like I said, which is so cool. And I think what I'm going to do, and the pockets go all the way down to here, damn. Okay, I mean, that's fine because we don't want everything showing. I think if I crop it to right where the pockets are, we can start from there. And then I'll use some of this stuff to make strips, turn them into like ruffles, stitch them on, and I think we will be in business. The only thing is that I'm realizing the top ruffle is going to not be under the waistband. So I got to figure that thing out because I'm not detaching. I'm not taking off the waistband. It fits fine the way that it is now. And I really just don't feel like seam ripping anything and reattaching it because I'm lazy. But yeah. So I think I'm going to grab my chalk marker really quick or something. I don't actually know where my fabric chalk went and I don't have any other chalk. So I'm going to have to mark this up somehow. All right, so I'm going to put a pin where I'm going to want to crop it so that I can take this off and start sewing. All right, I went ahead and tried this on again and realized that the pockets inside are huge, so I probably am going to shrink those down by a lot, and that would give me more room to bring this up shorter, especially since one of the ruffled tiers is going to hang over the end of the skirt. So I think we're good there. Okay, that should get us about where we need to be. I feel like already this is gonna look really good. Just with it being cropped, honestly. I mean, obviously it's not very even, but that's okay. It honestly is already so much cuter like this. I'm kind of wondering if I should just go ahead and try to make the tube top to go with it and then see what fabric I have left over. I'm kind of just already really happy with this. I don't know, is that dumb? I'm obviously gonna have to still take in these pockets because they're too much going on. They're like longer than the skirt itself is. Okay, so after kind of messing around with what I cut off from the skirt, I realized that these are basically 3 pieces of fabric all stitched together. I'm going to seam rip here to have one continuous piece for the tube top because what I want to do is cut it and tie it so there's a cute like DIY tie section going on in the back. And then I will use the rest of this to create strips, and then that will get me the tiered effect. Even though I know it won't be super gathered like how I planned in my head, that's okay. I think that's just how it's gonna be because I don't have enough fabric to gather it enough to be super ruffly, but that's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my seam ripper and start seam ripping this. All right, so I've separated the one long continuous piece that I'm gonna use for the tube top part from the 2 other pieces that were individual. So there's a seam here, and I seam ripped this portion. And now what I'm gonna do, I think, is start cutting out strips. And as I was working on ripping the seam, I thought, even though I can't do the gathers, I could do a lettuce hem, and that would get me some of that ruffled effect. So I'm gonna do that. Although this already has a hem, so I don't really know how that's gonna work. Well, now I'm trying to think if I even want to do this because of how the side is. I think I do. I'm gonna go for it. I'm just gonna go for it. I don't really want to think too much, even though I know that I should, so I don't mess this up, but I don't really care. So now that that's cut, what I'm gonna do is work on these pockets before it's too late. Other thing I kind of want to do is straighten out the bottom of the skirt a little bit because I think it's a little bit, yeah, like this is kind of wonky. I also don't really know how I would fix that. So I'm actually just gonna leave that alone. All right, so I'm going to pin this up. All right, so now I'm gonna do the same thing that I did here on the other side. Now that I have both of these pockets pinned up, I'm gonna go over to my sewing machine and stitch them up, and then we'll start working on adding the tiered layers to the skirt. So now that I've got the pockets done, I'm gonna take my hopefully longest strip. I gotta figure out which one that is because these kind of got all mixed up. I know that I said earlier that I would possibly do a lettuce hem, but I just don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna like the way that that looks on here. I just don't know. I'm gonna start with this and then pin it. I actually don't even know if I'm gonna have room to do anything, I'm realizing. I just don't think that I don't think that it's gonna actually stretch all the way around. I honestly just feel like this is kind of gonna be a bitch to pin because of the fact that it's already gathered here at the top. Okay, change of plans. I'm just going to kind of pull and stretch the ends, the hem of this, so that it rolls up on its own. I did want this to be a really, really fluffy skirt, but I just don't think that that's actually possible. I think I probably could have if I didn't also want to make a tube top out of it, but I do want to make a tube top out of it, so here we are. I think this is super cute the way that it is, and I'm gonna move on to the tube top. I don't even know if this is going to work actually. Maybe it's a good thing that I wasn't able to do the ruffles because then I can use that to fix this if we need to. What I was thinking is just that it ties. I just want it to tie around here, but maybe what I can do is put those tiered ruffle things on the tube top, and then that could be really fun, and then it would tie, right? Hopefully it would be able to tie. If not, then I'm a little bit screwed. I don't really have any good plans here, I'm realizing. Maybe it doesn't tie. I don't know. What I could do is cut into it, but once I do that, I won't really be able to undo that. And I don't know if I love my back enough to have it that exposed. Would I want this to be roughly and have tiers? I feel like that would make it less basic if it did, actually. Let's do it. Fuck it. We're doing it. I immediately abandoned the ruffle layers idea because I just realized it wasn't going to work. And then I started playing around with this lace fabric I had left over and seeing what that would look like as sort of an accent to kind of break up all of the red. And then playing around with the strips of fabric I cut up earlier to see how that would look as a wider strap. And then I just started to trace around the amount of lace that I would need with seam allowance. And then I pinned the right side of the lace to the wrong side of the red fabric so that after I sewed them together, I could flip over the lace and then do a top stitch on that, which I'll kind of show you that in the footage later. And then I'm just taking this back panel and untying the knot that I made when I tried it on so that I can hem the tops of both of those panels. After I sewed the lace in the wrong side of the red front piece together, I flip over the lace, and you could probably kind of lightly iron this with a towel on top, but I didn't want to do that, and I'm just going to add a top stitch to this so that the lace lays flat. And I am using a zigzag stitch for everything on this project since it is a stretchy fabric. And this is what it looks like after doing the top stitching. Then I laid it flat so that I could start to connect the side panels. So I'm just lining those up and then pinning it, and then of course using a zigzag stitch again to connect the panels to each side. And then this way the lace edge gets stitched up into the side seams. Here I am evening out these strips since it was not cut perfectly at all, so I'm just trying to square those off before I stitch up the sides and turn them inside out to attach to the shirt. And of course, since I've not measured anything or really mapped anything out, I have a lot of squaring off to do, so I just folded my shirt in half, lined up the seams, and cut off any excess fabric that was on the larger panel. Then again, without any planning whatsoever, I just started cutting strips into the back because I wanted to have multiple ties going on. And I pulled the fabric as much as I can to kind of get more length out of these little strips. I only did 3 because I thought it would look cute with a wider section of fabric kind of hanging down. And then here I am pinning the straps to the top. I think this is probably about the only time I measured anything to make sure that it was equal distance from the side seam and that it would be symmetrical once I put it on. I did end up top stitching down the bottom part of the lace section, and I thought I was going to leave it raw after trimming up the excess, but I just really didn't like how that looked, and it just really looked unfinished. So I found some red ribbon that kind of matched, and I seam ripped the side a little bit where I wanted to put the ribbon and stitched that in place, and then I pinned it across the top so that the edge of the lace was in the center of the ribbon, if that makes sense. And I top stitched that all the way to the middle on both sides, and then I ended up tying a little bow in the front. You could probably do like a faux bow and stitch it down the middle or something so that you don't have to keep retying it, but I didn't feel like doing that. I just wanted to put the ribbon on there, and if I have to retie it every time I put the shirt on, it really just doesn't bother me. I think the ribbon really pulled everything together and made it look way more professional than if I hadn't added it. And we've got a little try on, and then now it's time for the parade.
Oh, you are?
If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Here's a final look at my outfit and how I styled it for the parade. You can see that I styled it with my bloomer shorts that I sewed, which if you haven't seen the video already, you can click here and watch along as I sew these bloomer styled shorts. I know I made the 2-piece set for the parade, but when I put it on, the red on red just felt really flat and didn't have a lot of dimension. So to help add some texture and contrast, I decided to pair it with the white bloomer shorts that I made. All right, so that's it for this. I hope you enjoyed the sewing part, the parade part. If you enjoy these types of vlogs, be sure to leave a comment below and let me know what you want to see next. Bye!